And so last week, the Secretary of State gave what I thought was a landmark speech. We have a great story around tech at the moment. We are the third country in the world to have a $1 trillion valuation. We've got more unicorns now than France and Germany combined. Whoever it is actually across the world who has capital, who want to invest in the UK, the opportunities are there. I think this is one of the best times in our history to start a business.
Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm a tech philosopher and the founder of InPeak. My guest on today's podcast is Saqib Bhatti, the UK Technology Minister. I was excited to learn that the UK's Department for Science, Innovation and Technology will soon celebrate its one-year anniversary, and their priority is to make sure that 50% of unicorns coming out of Europe are from the UK. Naturally, this was super exciting news for me, and I really wanted to learn more about this initiative and how we could achieve this goal. Most importantly, I wanted to know how I could contribute to this goal with our team at InPeak. This is a great conversation to listen to, whether you are a founder or investor in the UK or an international company looking to do business in the UK. So without further ado, let's dive right in.
Mr. Bhatti, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm making a documentary. It's called From Silicon Valley to Riyadh. So tell me a little bit about your role when you started, about this new department. I'm super excited to learn more about it.
Well, fantastic, and I look forward to seeing the documentary. I'm very lucky. I got the call from the Prime Minister in early December, and as you'll know, the Prime Minister is absolutely dedicated for the UK to be a science and tech superpower by 2030. And he said, look, I want you to be my Minister for Tech and the digital economy. And so my responsibilities focus around some of the most cutting-edge technologies there are. And the Prime Minister, about almost a year ago, set up this new department, Science, Innovation and Technology, completely dedicated to some of the most advanced, some of the most exciting things we are having in society, and things that we in the UK are leading on. And so I'm responsible for artificial intelligence and the safety aspects of that, semiconductors, which is a huge topic which covers a whole array of every part of science at the moment requires science, semiconductors, and having advancement in that. We've got engineering, biology, quantum technologies, and then future telecom. So really, really exciting things. And part of the things I cover as well are digital skills, the general tech story, and the scale-up aspects of this, which is what the Secretary of State did a speech on just last week in terms of making sure that we are the best place for startups, but also scalable businesses. Because as you'll know, the potential for growth is absolutely huge in this sector. So I feel very privileged to be part of that journey.
That's so exciting. I'm so happy to hear that because right now, as I'm making this documentary, I've been spending a lot of time in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And I think that the culture of Silicon Valley is so different from Europe, because everything is coming from the private sector. People have a much higher risk tolerance. As a startup ourselves, we raised our pre-seed money here in the UK. And what I'm finding is that the risk tolerance is very low in Europe in comparison to Silicon Valley. So that's why it's so important for the government to give people that additional level of, courage and security. So tell me a little bit more about how you are trying to build this culture of investing in startups and like building the risk tolerance for failure and for examining different ways of doing things.
Well, look, you hit a really important point about culture. We have one of the first things I'd say is when I've come into this role, I keep saying there's a lot of doomsters and gloomsters around, right? And they're always talking about this is going wrong and that's going wrong. We have a great story around tech at the moment. We are the third country in the world to have a $1 trillion valuation, after the US and China. We've got more unicorns now than France and Germany combined. We are doing some really exciting things across a whole array of fields. And government, government can't do everything, but what it can do is it can be a convener, it can be an enabler, and it can create the environment, and it can work with private sector. And that's the other element of this. We have to work with the private sector to make sure we create that environment. And the Secretary of State always says, only business knows what business wants. And that is a really, really important philosophy, because government can't pick winners, right? We have to create the environment and let business do what it does best, basically. And so last week, the Secretary of State gave what I thought was a landmark speech in terms of really boosting our approach to scalable businesses, to make sure that we triple the rate at which we create unicorns. That's a huge aspect of this because, of course, unicorns in themselves are great employers, great innovators, they take risk, but there's also the supply chains around them. She announced the Scale Up Forum, which is making sure that we have a greater understanding with businesses, with experts to understand what we need to do around scalable businesses, and then also the Scale Up Support Service, which will be part of that. And then we're also going to do Dragon's Den style events to make sure, as you say, when you went for your funding, I'm sure there were many challenges that came about. Sometimes not knowing where to go, how to put the business case forward. So the idea here is to make sure that we get businesses, create the forum for businesses to be able to approach investors. And I think, you pick a field, I'll tell you about it. And semiconductors, for example, the potential is huge. And we have some really good strengths in this country. And so we're going to do everything we can to achieve that ambition of being a tech superpower by 2030.
Very cool. It sounds like, I really want to go back to the forum thing, but it sounds like the focus is more on deep tech. Is that correct?
Well, look, the focus is on, when you say deep tech, really, it's for businesses to decide. I'm a conservative, so I believe in the power of the market. So it is not for me to say, which is going to do better. But what we have picked on are 5 critical technologies. We know that these technologies are going to be great employment, opportunities for people. There's going to be great growth potential there. We also know they're going to transform society, right? Artificial intelligence is, everyone is talking about it. 2 years ago, despite, the government have been investing in AI from 2014, it was really when ChatGPT came about that we really came into the mainstream. If I walk down the street, people will be talking to me about AI. Quantum technologies have the ability now to transform the way we look at things, the way we do calculations and a whole, research and development. And so what we're doing as a government is making sure we're unlocking capital. So the Chancellor, for example, did the Mansion House reforms, and that's, that was a pivotal moment in unlocking pension monies for investment. So it goes back to that risk taking to make sure that capital is there. We're making sure banks like the UK Infrastructure Bank play a huge role, and we've already seen success on that. So they've unlocked £22 billion, and we saw Pragmatic, a great firm in the semiconductor space, which had the largest amount of Series D funding than any other company in Europe. So we're already starting to see great successes. So I'm really, really optimistic about the future of tech in this country.
Very cool. Tell me about the forum. What does it look like when you say a forum? Is going to be like ongoing events? Is there going to be an app that connects people? What does it actually look like?
Well, look, it's really exciting because we're in that kind of design phase of it at the moment. We're working with businesses. We've had immense demand already where people are interested in taking part. But ultimately, what it is about bringing together experts and business leaders and academia and working with scalable businesses to understand. It's more than just a talking shop. It's got to be something that relies and focuses on action and make sure that the UK is a great space to scale a business. Prior to being an MP, I was president of the Chamber of Commerce in the West Midlands, the Greater Birmingham Chambers, and I was a LEP director, so on the Local Enterprise Partnership. We had the largest amount of startups outside of London for 5 or 6 years running under my portfolio. But when it came to survivability, it was a whole, it was a massively complex area. And I know you've got a great track record in the tech industry. There's a real challenge around scalability. And what I want to do, my personal ambition, is that, if someone says, I want to create the next billion-dollar company or the billion-pound company, they'd pick the UK because they know this is the place where they get the support. This is the place where the government backs them. And really, that's what DCIT's all about. That's
such an important point because, my ambition is to build our platform into a billion-dollar company, or a billion-pound company, right? And what we are building is basically a platform where we are bringing together startups and VCs and LPs all together.
Massively
right?
important.
Very important, yeah, exactly. And one of the ways that we are looking at that, and as I'm looking at, potentially raising our next Series A, I'm thinking about where to go for that. And people are telling me, you should go to the US, you should open a Delaware company. But I'm a UK citizen, I'm a British citizen, and I have a strong feeling about wanting to be part of this ecosystem.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, the sense is a lot of people think that everything is in the US, like because of the opportunities there, opportunities, everything is in Silicon Valley, you really want to be there. So our goal, and this documentary that I'm making is from Silicon Valley to Riyadh, basically is looking at how the Silicon Valley developed as a 1.0 technology hub, all right? And then looking at how Riyadh and like the Arab world is trying to build, the next technology hub. And where does UK fit into this? Typically, people would say that the UK is more like an extension of Silicon Valley. But I don't necessarily think so. I think that in many ways, the UK can be its own technology hub.
Tell me who says that. We must absolutely have a word with them. This is look, the UK is going to be unique. It's going to be a great place to grow a business. We're already showing that, right? And it's because we recognise that partnership between the public sector and the private sector. And look, don't get me wrong. Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley, right? They've got a great track record. My general philosophy in life is be the best you can be, but learn from those people who've done things right and learn from their mistakes as well. Because as you'll know, and we know this in tech, if there's no such thing as a linear journey of success, right? There is always your mistakes are as important as your successes, really, sometimes more important. But I'm very confident that we can build ecosystems across the UK. And the bit, something that really, I'm from the West Midlands, right? So tech does not just respect the boundaries of cities or countries. It's a great leveler. And what you can do is have tech across the regions. And so when I came into Parliament, we were talking about levelling up, talking about growth and opportunity, all those things. Tech is a hugely important aspect of that. And so what I see as the potential for this is the growth clusters building up all over the United Kingdom. And one of my first visits, by the way, was to the semiconductor cluster in South Wales, right? And in South Wales, we are world leaders, the first ever global cluster in compound semiconductors. And that market is, the potential for that is so large. And we're seeing companies coming over, I've been meeting with them. So anyone who says that, we're not doing enough, actually, I would challenge them to go and meet these companies who are telling me they want to come here. And because we're skilling up talent and we're investing in that, hugely important aspect of this, we're making sure that the funding environment is strong, and the Chancellor and the Treasury have played a huge part in that. Also helps that both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have a great understanding of business and the tech industry. And we're making sure that we are being enablers, and and where there are gaps, we will talk to the experts like yourself and to businesses and say, okay, tell us what we need to do more. And what I've seen in 1 year alone is just how fast everything has moved. And that's what I love about this department. It's just so nimble, it's so quick, and so adaptable.
It must be so exciting. Tell me, what was the catalyst for the starting of this new department a year ago? Did it have something to do with LLMs, and the whole excitement around large language models?
I think it's beyond that, but obviously when we chose the critical technologies, AI was a huge part of this. But I think for a long time, businesses and the industry generally talk about having dedicated departments around this. I for a long time have thought we needed something around science and innovation because quite often, I will, even before I was a minister, I would get briefings and people would say, we're third in this and second in this. And the question I always will say is, why are we not first and what will it take us? And so for us to be top in our journey, having a dedicated department, which is dedicated to growth in our critical sectors is hugely important. And I think one of the most pivotal decisions that this Prime Minister has taken, apart from the decisions on AI, will be the fact that we had a dedicated department on this. It's a hugely important thing. And most of the tech industry that I meet have relayed that to me. So we're coming up to the 1-year birthday. It's going to be very exciting. I think we've got a lot to be proud of.
Amazing. Now, one of the reasons why I think this having a separate department for something like this is important is because it's from all the research that I've done over the past. This is the second documentary I'm making around these types of topics. Is that I feel like in the UK we have a very strong SME culture, but we don't really have enough of a differentiation between what it takes to build a like a services type business that can turn into an SME kind of business than a tech startup. So for example, when I started my first company, I got a startup loan.
Yeah.
But actually, they call it a startup loan, but almost none of the companies, or like maybe 90% of the companies that took that loan actually built a startup. When I say we often use the term startup.
Yeah.
For any company that has just started. But technically, when in a Silicon Valley kind of culture, when you say a startup, you mean a startup that is planning to raise several rounds and build a big, like a big scalable company. So I think we need to really build a culture of startups in the real meaning of startups, meaning that these are like scalable companies. So tell me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that this new department is separating the kind of work that is done around SMEs and really focusing on scalable startups. Is that right?
So look, it's a huge question actually. So you're right about the SME culture. We're really proud of that. I spent most of my professional career advising small businesses, and I'm really proud of that because I think it makes me a stronger politician first of all. But we have a great culture of startups. But what I think I think it's fair to say, and the reason for the interventions last week is when those businesses want to scale up. Not everyone does, of course, and that's fine. But there are those who will do, and they're really exciting technologies. Whether it's in, we will see some real transformation across a whole number of technologies. The support has to be there in the right places. So part of it is understanding it, which is why that Scale Up Forum is going to be very important. But again, I stress the capital aspect of this because when that capital is unleashed, which is what the Chancellor wanted to do, it's again creating that environment to say actually that funding's available and what are the opportunities around that. And I think there's the potential for growth, and you're right to point this out. The potential for growth in this arena is absolutely huge. I don't know what the next unicorn will be, but I know it's coming, and I know there are plenty more on their way because we've got lots of exciting businesses going on. And I think one of the key differences that we've got here to, say, Europe, for example, which is the numbers bear that as a consequence and as a result as well, is, the government is measured in its interventionism. And I think that's really, really important. We will create the environment, we'll do the light touch regulation, we'll talk to businesses, but ultimately it will be industry that will lead the charge. And it's for, we will support them in that journey.
Nice. Tell me about the light touch. What do we mean by that, and why is it important?
Well, I think, look, for me, I'm a free marketeer. I really believe in the power of the market. But there are times when there's market failures. There are times when intervention is required. So, and that is a judgment that has to be made. And I'm very pleased that DCIT have made the correct judgment on that when it comes to scale-ups, for example, because we know there is potential there. And it's about making sure we create that environment. So the announcements last week were a huge element of that. And you always have to be ever vigilant on these things. I mean, AI is a great example. We are, while there are calls, say, from the opposition to legislate and move forward, I think the Prime Minister's got absolutely the right approach to this, which is let's understand what we've got first. We know there's a huge opportunity. AI is a very precious thing at the moment because we know it's going to create jobs, it's going to improve productivity, it's going to improve society. But we also know there is the potential for risk, which is why we led on the AI Safety Summit. We had countries from across the world come, including China. We had the European Union, and we had the Bletchley Declaration. We agreed together collectively as a global community that we will work together to make sure that AI is safe. Frontier risk is something that we will look at. But we also don't want to kill off innovation. And that's where the real challenge and the balance must be achieved.
Yeah. The one industry that you didn't mention is blockchain. And I know that, the Prime Minister has talked about that in the past. Is that also on the horizon? Is that a technology you're looking at as well?
Yeah, so it's not what I look at in DCIT, but I think DBT look at blockchain. I know the Treasury have done a lot of work on that. And then blockchain is a really exciting new technology. It has great potential in the financial services, etc. But again, there's also risks attached with blockchain. So it's we've got to make sure that we approach it with level heads to try and take advantage of that. So it's not the answer to everything,
yes.
But there's definitely opportunities there.
Yeah, definitely. In 2021, people thought it was the answer. You added the word blockchain to everything. Yeah. And it was
I wish I had the foresight in 2012 when Bitcoin first came out. But, that's one of those things.
You and me both. So let's talk a little bit about the position of the UK in the international world, right? So for example, one of the things that I'm working on right now is getting in LPs from, the limited partners from Saudi and from Dubai to invest in Western, Silicon Valley and UK companies, right? That's one of the areas. So I'm going to be in Saudi in about a couple of weeks, and they're very interested in. There's a whole new culture of investment being developed there. And there is a lot of money there. And their goal is to try and assimilate with the Western culture and kind of bring in their startups to expand here, but also they want to invest in Western startups. So how can we make sure that these new opportunities opening up, that these countries, the kind of capital that's being unlocked, that some of it comes into the UK and because I know that there's a lot happening between Saudi and Silicon Valley. I haven't seen as much with the UK, but we have a very rich culture of assimilating with the Middle East. So tell me a little bit about how can we make sure that the UK has a presence in cross borders, transatlantic.
Well, look, it's a great question. I mean, the developments that I'm seeing in the Emirates, in Saudi, for example, it's absolutely fascinating, right? They're investing a huge amount of money domestically as well, and clearly they've got the ambition to be world leaders as well. And actually, that kind of competition is welcome because I suspect that when you do those things, especially in the tech sector, it drives up standards, it drives up the quality of those tech startups. But look, Somi, the answer to you is the UK is open for business, right? We are here, we are creating some of the most exciting, industries, the most exciting startups. So, if whoever it is actually across the world who has capital, who want to invest in the UK, the opportunities are there. And of course we see it in other fields, whether it's media or football or manufacturing, you see investment coming in. And I take that as a real moment of pride because clearly the opportunities are there. So I'm sure my colleagues in the Foreign Commonwealth and FCDO Development Office and DBT will be massively happy, and as will I, to have conversations with anyone.
Okay, great, awesome. You should put me in touch with them because I'd love to see how I can help facilitate some of this.
That sounds great. That sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess as we come towards the end of this conversation, one of the things I want to explore is what can the startup founders themselves do, or scale-up founders, the founders in general, what can they do to get more involved and to help them?
Well, look, first of all, do more of what they're doing, first of all, right? Because this is all about them. This is about their innovation. This is about the fact that they take the risks. They're the ones who, create the technologies of tomorrow. And in terms of what they can do in terms of government, get in touch, right? Talk to us. We are, what the Secretary of State did last week was show them that we are open for business. We are willing to have the conversations, and we will do what's necessary to give them the best start in their journey. And again, I'm really excited about that. And but the government can't do this by itself. Business has to lead the charge, and those founders, if they've got an idea. I think this is one of the best times in our history to start a business.
Okay. And in addition to helping them with funding, are you also looking at potentially helping them with getting clients from, let's say, big corporations? I think there are a lot of opportunities for our startups to be able to pitch to, let's say, Google and Colgate or whatever, right? All this. Yeah. So are you looking at also these types of opportunities where you bring in these companies to pitch to big corporations and get them as clients? Because in many cases, it's almost impossible to penetrate those corporations. So one of the things that I think the government can do is to, as part of this forum, is to facilitate not just pitching to get funding, but also pitching to get business with these big corporations.
And it's so important. And I think when we talked about the Dragon's Den style events, that's exactly what they're intended to do, which is basically to shine a spotlight on these founders and hopefully those people who have the checkbooks and the wallets can see a business that they've never really considered before, they've not seen it, and they have that opportunity. But look, the best thing, when I was talking to some young people yesterday about getting involved in politics and tech and business, my best advice is get involved and talk to us and have those conversations, because sometimes you just don't know where the next opportunity is going to come from. And what you need is then, you need someone with the confidence and ambition to grasp those opportunities with both hands.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks a lot.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Minister Bhatti of the UK. Be sure to follow him on LinkedIn and stay up to date with their content and progress. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel on YouTube or wherever you get your audio podcast so that you don't miss the future episodes. It will mean the world to me if you leave a review and share the podcast with others that you think might enjoy it.